What's going on, y'all? It's David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the World Options Training Academy. And so what we're going to talk about today is why the relationship industrial complex needs you single forever. And what we're really going to do is we're going to go to a breakdown of how this complex works, what its goals are, and then how that can negatively impact you. And then what are some takeaways that you need to do to put yourself in a position where you won't be negatively impacted, right? Because there's a lot of people kind of caught up in the thrall or in the wave of this particular content with not really understanding what the bigger picture is, because they're in a rabbit hole. They're dealing with a lot of, I don't know, some type of bias around information that they would like to hear around certain situations. And it's not going to put them in a position to be successful long term. Because what we're not only going to talk about is we're going to talk about young people in this particular video, but we're also going to talk about older people and seniors. Because what I want you to do is have a long-term perspective of where your life may end up because of the things that you're currently involved in right now, right? Because if you're fortunate, you will get old, you will get older, you will become a senior if you're fortunate. And then the question starts to be, how do you arrive there? And then what does your life look like while you're there, right? So really quickly, we're going to go to the sponsor of the show. That's www.thehighestpay.online. So normally I talk about options trading, but what I want to expose you to something is an offer we created last month in November. It's called the Lazy Investor. And the Lazy Investor is designed to help people understand, one, the importance of investing, the importance of compounding their money, and also the importance of time in the market, but also creating it in a way in which you don't have to be a market expert. You don't have to spend a lot of time trying to study the market. You don't have to wake up every day and be looking at charts and things of that nature, by teaching you how to invest in a very lazy way, right? So it's called a Lazy Investor. The price point is perfect for a person that really doesn't understand a lot about the market. They're at an entry level. So what I want to encourage you to do is go to the www.thehighestpay.online, look for the Lazy Investor course, and start working on understanding what we're talking about in that course and setting yourself up for a long-term success, right? Because the goal of that is we're going to start doing more content around it in 2025, maybe even put out our own channel based around that. But what we really want to do is start having more conversations about how to put yourself on a long-term trajectory of success, as opposed to how to just have good short-term success and your long-term doesn't really go the way you want it to go, right? So that's what we're going to talk about there. So I want to encourage you to reach out into that. So let's get back to this particular content, right? The relationship industrial complex. So we all understand that talking about relationships, especially online, has really exploded the space, right? Relationships was always something that people got into. It created content. It was very provocative. It created talking pieces. But now that everybody can do it on the internet, it's creating a lot of, I would say, business opportunity for a lot of people. And a lot of people have figured out different ways to niche themselves in this particular space. And the challenge is, when you're listening to that information, I'm going to kind of talk about it in this video. How does it really help you long term, right? And are they just really relaying back to you what you already believe about a situation? And there will be no long-term benefit from what you're buying into. And so these are some of the questions that you want to ask yourself, as opposed to, I'm cutting on the internet and this person is telling me what I want to hear about a situation. So they're just relaying this back to me. Now, why do I call it the relationship industrial complex? Years ago, we had this president named Eisenhower. And as he was getting ready to leave office, he talked about the military industrial complex. And what he wanted people to understand is that this military industrial complex has gotten so big that they now need wars to justify their existence. So the complex can't stick around. It can't be profitable. It can't grow if there's peace, because their business is war. And he says, as this complex continues to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, you're going to get less peace and more wars. And he was talking about this in the 60s. What I want you to understand, we're talking about this relationship industrial complex. If people are partnered up, if people are in healthy relationships, if people can get along with each other, they don't have a way of making money. They're only making money off the failure, right, of people in relationships, and they have a financial incentive to keep that failure going. Okay? They don't have a financial incentive of actually repairing situations, because then what? How do they make their money? So if I've been able to come on the internet and I've been able to become very, very financially successful, making money, talking about relationships on the internet, which is going to be a multiple of what I could be making doing anything else, right? I don't have a financial incentive to actually repair relationships. I need relationships to be in disarray. So then what can happen with a business is not we now do is we try to create the conditions to create the business case. So that's something that a lot of people need to understand. Once my model needs the scenario to exist, we can do like a lot of other businesses do. Now what we do is we try to create an environment to always justify our business. So you'll see like in the mass incarceration situation, you'll see private prisons, they will lobby and finance for legislation to get more people locked up because why? That's how they make their money. So they now say, well, you know what? Let's create an environment that justifies our business. And so this is something that I believe that the relationship industrial complex is doing, is that they have no real desire to really repair people. Because why? How do I make money now? If my whole life has been changed by being able to talk about relationships on the internet, if it's totally changed the life of me and my family, it's changed our financial situation, I don't want the problem solved because I don't have any other way of making money. This has created my money. This created my fame. This created my status. This has given me the attention that I've always desired, right? Because many of these people, nobody knows them in real life. So if I got a really, really big TikTok page talking about relationships, or the one young lady who came out around a year ago and she did like 100 videos talking about everything that was wrong with her ex-husband. She never got that much attention in her life. She's never got that much attention then, right? She came and went. And I really believe that she was sent, but she came and went. So this type of behavior has been incentivized through financial ability. It's been incentivized through the desire to get attention. And so what it does is it breeds more people looking to come into this space, and all they want to do is keep this thing churning. So I call it the relationship industrial complex, and it needs you single forever. Because if I'm married to somebody, I don't want them listening to that, because my question is, what value do you get from that content? What's the actual value that you get from listening to this person? And all they're really here to do is separate people and to make you be suspicious of everybody else as if they're the ideal case of perfect. We got a lot of perfect people on the internet. So they don't really need people together. They don't need people with good partners, because if I'm in a relationship and I'm listening to Fresh and Fit, right, I can understand why my partner would have an issue with that, because they're anti-relationships. They're here for the destruction of relationships. In the same while, if I'm in a relationship with a woman and she's listening to people that I think are really about the destruction of relationships, I can understand why she would have an issue with it, but she needs to understand why I have an issue with her listening to that. So they have no incentive to bring people together. Their money can only be made if people are separate. And now that they built their whole life off that business model, they have no desire for that business model to go away, because you have people that have been doing this for decades. And if you notice, they have not divested out of that space. They're still here. Why? Because they can't make that kind of money doing anything else. It wasn't like, you get some people, they get an internet run and they do 5 years and they go do real estate and they go do truck and they do something else. You notice a lot of these people in the relationship space, they've been doing this stuff forever. They're not going anywhere, because what they think they're getting from this, they don't believe they can get it anywhere else. So unlike a lot of other spaces where they say, hey, I'm going to take my money and put it into real estate, I'm going to take my money and put it into another business, and I'm going to move away out of this space, they're not going nowhere. Because what they're getting from this space, they don't believe they can get that anywhere else. So I'm going to call it the relationship industrial complex. I'm not going to trademark it. You can use the same thing, but ask yourself, do these people in this particular space really have an incentive for people really to repair relationships, get things together, and start moving forward? Because then what is their business case in anybody's life anymore? They really don't have anything else they can evolve to. So that's what we're going to break down, right? So the first myth is the myth that everyone is having sex except you, and they're just out to get sex from you. That's a really, really big myth that we hear in these spaces, right? And it's really designed to keep people fearful of other people, right? That everybody is having sex except you, right? And then the other issue was that everybody is just out to get sex from you. So you need to be fearful of everybody else because they're just out to get sex from you, right? And so here's why you need to listen to me, because men are just out to get sex from you. Or, if you listen to a lot of this male content, all women are just having a million sex partners all over the planet, right? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to use sex as a way to create fear in your life, because you're supposed to believe that everybody's having sex except you, right? What I want you to understand is that there's been a lot of studies done around people and their sexual behavior, especially over the last few years. And what we're finding out is that people are not having sex in real life based on these particular studies as much as people are talking about it on the internet. So my theory is, and I haven't put any data behind it, is that the people that are having sex are just doing a lot of talking. But that doesn't really mean that a lot of people are having sex. But in this relationship industrial complex space, they use this as fear factor to make you fearful of other people. So a lot of men are made to believe that everybody's having sex except them. And so anytime they meet a woman, she's had all these sexual partners, but if she's not having sex with you, you're missing out. Or on the flip side, it's all men are just trying to have sex with you. And so you need to listen to my content so you can learn how not to get abused by men that are just trying to have sex with you. And it's a way of making sure that those people stay close to them and never really build real relationships. But let's get into some of the studies that we looked at, right? So here's an article from the Los Angeles Times. Let me get rid of my comment, right? And they talk about UCLA. Let's go and get the headline. Failure to launch while young people are having less sex. This is from 2023 of August. It says UCLA has been tracking behavioral trends through its annual California Health Survey. That's the largest health survey in the nation. It includes questions about sexual activity. So in 2021, the survey found the number of young Californians aged 18 to 30 who reported having no sexual partners in the prior year reached a decade high of 38%. In 2011, 22% of young people reported having no sexual partners during the prior year, and that percentage climbed fairly steadily as the decade progressed, right? So the broader trend of young adults foregoing sex holds true nationally. The University of Chicago's General Social Survey, which has been following behavior trends for decades, found that 3 in 10 Generation Z males aged 18 to 25, surveyed in 2021, reported having gone without sex during the prior year. 1 in 4 Gen Z women also reported having no sex the prior year, according to Jean Twenge, who reviewed the data for her book Generations. So we have this particular breakdown. This is a graph. Report surveyed at least 6 million Califas or Californians in ages 18 to 30 each year, right? Number of sexual partners in the last 12 months, we see that that's increasing to 0 partners. We got 1 partners being around the 50% and then 2 or more partners decreasing as we go through the years, right? So we really want to start to examine these ages between 18 to 30. Now, you would assume that young people are having more sex because they're young people, but we're not necessarily seeing that in this particular study. So one of the things I like to do is I like to bring data to the forefront, because what we get in a lot of these spaces, and it's not everybody's fault because most people don't do anything from a social science standpoint, having to really look at mounds of data is not what they have to do for their job. So it's very easy for them to fall into just conversation, right? But no real modeling and data behind it based on understanding what's going on in the world behind us. And so what we get is we kind of get these rabbit holes of people saying stuff. And if it sounds good, if they're very, very convincing, it sounds good. Or people saying, well, you know, God told me to say something, and that's cool. But the problem is that God is not an enemy of mathematics because God created the mathematics, right? And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that. But a way to try to shield myself from any kind of analysis of what I'm saying is just say, well, God told me. Well, then that means that God has to be an enemy of mathematics, but I don't believe that. My God is not an enemy of math. So this attitude to where we're going to infer from millions of people inside the United States, but we won't even go look at studies and go look at data around what their behavior is. To me, it's very faulty, but it's what goes on, right? And I believe, and this is my own theory, is the reason why there's a combination effect. Younger people at younger and younger ages are getting addicted to pornography. They're getting exposed to pornography. That's contributing to the lack of sex that they're having, right? It is happening at younger and younger ages because of the internet, because of easy access to pornography. It is not just impacting men, it's also impacting women, even though nobody really wants to talk about that piece of the situation, right? So what I want you to understand is that I really believe that this is a twofold thing. We have people that are having less sex, right? But we also have people that are consuming more pornography, because if you actually go look at the data, the porn industry is bigger than Hollywood. They do more numbers based on their scale, right? Cost of production is way lower, but the revenue they bring in based on their cost of production is way, way higher. And now because of the internet, they're everywhere. And so I think these numbers are going to continue to increase because of a lot of social factors, but also because of a lot of easy access to pornography. You can go on Twitter right now, you can get XXX porn on Twitter. You don't have to pay for anything, right? So I think this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to have to deal with, but we need to actually start putting some data behind it and start modeling it out. So here's another thing from the Washington Post. What year is this? This is 2019. So this can be considered relatively old, but I don't have newer data. We're looking at lack of sex is driven mainly by the young. Now, we don't mean virgins. We mean people that are just not sexually active. We don't mean virgins. We're looking between 18 and 29. We're seeing that 23% is going up. From 2008 to 2018, it shot up, right? 50 to 59 has gone up a little bit. 40 to 49 has gone down. I'm sorry, 40 to 49, and the 30 to 39 has gone down. 40 to 49 has stayed relatively flat. Again, the narrative now is that these people are having less sex because they're unpartnered, right? But historically, what we always believe is that young people, but especially young single people, were having more sex. What we're seeing is a demographic change. So this attitude that we're getting on the internet is that we're going to create fear factor around sex and make every man believe that anytime you meet a woman, she's having multiple sexual partners. So if she's not having sex with you, she's trying to play you, right? That's what I came on here and told men to stop tripping on sex, because that's being used to control you in your behavior. And then also telling women, well, every man that you meet is just out to have sex with you. And unless you buy my content or listen to my mastermind or yada, 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 you're not going to know how to avoid that. And you're going to end up like the rest of the women. What I said is I believe we have a group of people that are sexually active. And what they do is after they mess up their life, just having a lot of irresponsible sex, they run to the internet to talk about it, right? But the people that are not having sex, they're really not as vocal. So they never really get any kind of representation, right? So this is something that's really, really big in a relationship industrial complex, is to use sex as a weapon to really try to corral, put what we call four walls around people, to keep them there, to make them fearful of not having sex or people that are having sex too much, right? So let's go on to the next topic, right? Myth 2, that long-term relationships can get routine, right? And I want to say that as a negative, so that it's a negative that long-term relationships can get routine. Let me explain something to you. Anybody that I know that's been married for an extended period of time, and I have a lot of family members that are married for an extended period of time, they'll tell you that most long-term relationships will fall into a routine, especially once you start having children, because you have the children on a routine, right? Especially young children. They often do better on routines. So this idea to where if you're in a relationship and everything has to be this high level exhilaration, we jet setting all over the planet 24/7, 365, and that becomes your expectation for a suitable relationship, right? That can be a problem if the person can't keep that going, right? So if you are thinking the only way I can keep this person with me is if every day is another, we just moving around, everything's this, that, and the third, we ripping and running, and you got to keep that up. What happens if you can't keep that up? What's the justification for the relationship? Because you set the expectation. So that's why I'm always resistant, especially when we're dealing with men, where this expectation that they have to make the relationship be at this exhilarating level all the time, right? To be suitable, to be valid, because the problem is, one, they may walk into that not knowing they can't keep it up. They may walk into that thinking they can keep it up and realize 6 months in, I can't keep doing this. Or they may be able to maintain it, but then what happens if they can't maintain it? Right? For any reason. There's a brother right now that just claimed he's cancer-free. Hopefully he is. But he just had a serious operation dealing with cancer. Now he got to go through a lot of rounds of chemotherapy, a lot of rounds of radiation. Right? If his wife was addicted to moving around and jet setting, yada, 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 what's going to happen now? Because he's not going to be in a position to do that. So if the expectation is set that this is how a relationship with me looks all the time, what happens once you can't do that anymore for whatever reason? Because he's not the only person that's going to come down with an illness. A lot of people are going to get sick this year, right? So what I want you to understand is that the idea that this should be your expectation, and if a person can't do this for you, then they're not valid to be in a relationship. We're going to talk about, as you get towards the end of your life, the cost associated with you retiring, you being able to get support, things of that nature. How do you do both at the same time? And you know what you'll get from nobody in the relationship industrial complex? You'll never get a financial model based around that. They won't do it. What I'm going to do in this video today, they won't do that. And many of them make more money than me. All they got to do is hire somebody to do it. They can hire an accountant, pay them $500. They can put something together and show people, well, you know, if you're maintaining this level of entertainment, yada, 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 and you make X amount of money per year based on these particular financial situations, this is how you retire. Won't do it because why? Their audience won't ask for it. So then therefore they won't do it because it cracked that facade. Right? So that's something I want people to understand. I've known people that have been married since the 50s, since the 60s, since the 70s. I have members of my family. They got married relatively young. They passed away married. Their life was not always going back and forth doing this, that, and the third. Their life became very routine, especially when they had children. Once the children left the house, maybe sometimes once they retired, they got a little bit more excitement. But when they was raising children, their life was very routine because why? They had to stay on a routine for the kids because the kids had things they needed to do. So they couldn't do all this other stuff what their children needed to do. So it was a lot of waking up, taking the kid here, coming back home, going to work, waking up, taking the kid there, coming back home, going back to work, going here. It was a routine. It wasn't every day is this big fantasy. But if a person's looking for that and they think that's what they should be getting because of what somebody told them on the internet, now they're trying to hold somebody else up to it. And then people are trying to live up to it because they want to be around this person. They think that's what they got to do. That's a myth. Life's not really like that. Life can get very routine at times. Myth number 3, that you're perfect. And I'm talking about the person that is inside some of these rabbit holes based around this relationship industrial complex. And everybody else has limitations that should not be understood. Right? So the idea is that I'm talking to a person. I'm one of these people in the relationship industrial complex. Right? I'm a content maker in that space. My audience is perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. They just need to be aware of everything else. So everything external to them is the problem. They're never the problem. Right? Because my audience blows up if I start telling them that they're the problem. They blow up. They're not here for that. So I may sprinkle one video here and now in there to do that, but I'm definitely not going to make the majority of my content based around you're the problem and you're the reason why things aren't working. So then we also frame it that everybody else has limitations that should not be understood. Because every person you meet in this world has limitations. Every person. Right? There's things they're going to be able to do really well. There's things they're not going to be good at. But the relationship industrial complex, to make sure that they keep the ball going, they keep the money in the space, they make sure that you never get understanding and you get tools on how to understand other people's limitations. Right? Because one, you never understand yours because you're perfect. That's why you're here. You're here because you're perfect and you're trying to figure out how to deal with imperfect people because you're perfect. So now I'm going to help you get to understanding of how to deal with imperfect persons, right? Because you're perfect. Everybody else is messed up. But in reality, everybody has limitations. Everybody on the planet. And in relationships, whether they're going to be romantic, they're going to be professional, right? They're going to be just friendly. You have to understand how to deal with those people's limitations, right? And how do they deal with your limitations? And can we figure out how to get to some type of unity or common cause around our limitations? But this idea that I'm perfect and everybody else got limitations and I shouldn't understand their limitations, right? I'm not understanding how you actually build relationships like that. But the goal of the relationship industrial complex is not to help build relationships. It's to keep the ball going. It's to keep the money going through the industry. That's their goal. So they know what they're doing, but they don't care. Just like the military industrial complex, they don't care how many people die in wars because why? How else they going to make their money? right? If I sell weapons, I need wars to sell weapons. So I can't think about how many people are dying in Ukraine. I just got to look at a balance sheet and try to figure out how many weapons I'm going to sell this year. So I'm never going to push for peace. I'm pushing for more war. Then it can get to the point where I'm behind the scenes trying to incite war, because why? I need to justify the weapons that I make. It can get that deep, right? So let's get into the next one. Myth 4, that people need to show up perfect because you're perfect. So we're still building off this idea that the people that are in this space, the followers, the members that are following these particular content creators, that they're perfect. So then what happens is people need to show up perfect because I'm perfect. So if a person doesn't show up exactly the way I need them to show up all the time, they're no good because I'm perfect. So it should be easy for somebody else to show up perfect, right? But how are people perfect when people aren't perfect? Well, we know on the internet, everybody's perfect, right? Nobody is trying to improve themselves unless they can monetize it. Nobody has any issues unless they can monetize it. But everybody's perfect outside of those two scenarios, right? So nobody has any weight issues unless I can do a weight loss journey and monetize it, right? Nobody has any psychological mental health issues unless I can monetize my mental health journey. Other than that, I'm perfect, right? So the idea that people need to show up perfect because I'm perfect, it creates a standard that's unreasonable for other people, right? But how does a long-term relationship work if you always need that other person to be perfect? How does it work? Right? Not only do they got to be, they got to show up perfect. So they have to show up already ready to go, right? They got to be like those type of businesses they call turnkey businesses, which aren't perfect. But you don't have to build the business. The business is already there for you. You just turnkey it. But the business is imperfect. Still got to work the business. So if you think that somebody sells you a turnkey business, like relationships are turnkey, this person is going to show up and everything's already been established with this person. All I got to do is walk into it and everything's just going to fall right into place. Well, if you believe that and it don't happen, now what do? You blow up? That's what most people do. Then they go back to that relationship person and try to figure out, well, here's why that person wasn't perfect. And here's why you need to watch out for it. You go look for your next perfect relationship. People aren't perfect. And people can develop issues over time based on what's going on in their life, because people have seasons in their life, right? So anything can happen. The question is, what are you committed to in a relationship, right? But they don't never frame it that way, because why? It don't keep the ball rolling. Don't keep money coming through the industry, right? And I said that. I can look at business models. I know how business models actually work, right? If we solve the problem, they don't have a business anymore. So what's their incentive to get the problem solved? You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So I want people to really look at that myth that somebody else has to show up perfect, right? Because I'm perfect, and so I'm worthy of a perfect person. The problem is you're not perfect. And I spoke to one woman that came on my particular broadcast when I was talking about how men were not being respected. And I said, it's cool you get to tell your story, but the problem is you're telling your story from the perspective that you're a perfect person. And so you notice that when people tell these stories about these bad relationships, it's never what they did in the relationship. It's always what the other person did, as if they was perfect in a relationship. It don't work that way, right? It's always multiple sides to a story. It's multiple perspectives, and that truth somewhere in there. And you may never be able to pull it out, because the problem is that when people tell you their story about what took place in a relationship, they're going to always try to make themselves look good. So you got to dig in there to try to find the story. But people always tell their story of the relationship from the perspective that they're perfect, they're the victim, and the other person was the worst person in the world. And they get away with that on the internet because nobody ever challenges a story, right? That's the next one. Myth 5, you can do it all by yourself financially long-term. So now we're going to get into some data, right? What they won't do, because they know, where they from, they God is the enemy of mathematics. So they'll never go into any data. Now we're going to go into data, we're going to model it out, right? We're going to model it out because data on its face is really not that valuable. It's how we use the data to model it out to get an understanding of the world around us. That's what makes data important. And I'm going to give you a really, really basic model. If I make some mistakes, you can always turn around and correct me because I'm not a mathematician. But what I try to do in the early amount of time and the amount of time before I did this particular video is get some data, get a scenario, model it out based on what's going on in the world around us. So let's go ahead and get into it, right? So the idea that you can do it all by yourself financially long term, I think that idea, currently I think that ideal is improbable. I think that ideal becomes more and more improbable as we go into the future. I'm going to kind of show you why. But I think currently the numbers are to where unless you're an extremely high income earner and you are very diligent around saving money during your career, you had a really good run investing money during your career, and you didn't have any financial emergencies. You didn't get sick. You didn't lose your job for an extended period of time. You didn't have a family emergency that you had to tend to that maybe took money out of your pocket, right? None of those things. So essentially you had a perfect run during your working career. It's going to be very difficult for a lot of people to retire as an individual. It's going to be difficult for people to do it as a group. It's going to be almost next to impossible to do it as an individual. Because I'm talking to you about the current state of things. We're talking about 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we're going to be in a totally different environment. And nobody's telling you this in these spaces because they don't do math, right? Because God is the enemy of mathematics. So they don't do math, and they know the audience don't want to hear math. They just want to hear what they want to hear about a relationship. But I'm here to tell you, right? The idea that you're going to be able to do this by yourself is already currently in 2024 going to be very difficult. As we start to go into the future, it's going to be probably next to impossible. It's going to probably be next to impossible unless you just had the run of all runs as a worker. And we know how much the average person makes in America currently right now today. Most people are not high income earners in America. They're not, based on the data. So we can't create a scenario that only works for a high income earner when we know that most of the people that are in our model are not high income earners. Now, if we're only going after the rich to do relationship consulting with, that's different. But if we're bringing people into our funnel that are the average American worker, how does it work for them in the back end of their life to believe these type of myths? Especially the one that you can do it all by yourself financially long term, which is a myth, right? But when I came on the internet, they was telling black people that black women make more money than black men. And all we did was we just went to BLS data. And if you got alternate data, bring it to the forefront. But we just went to BLS data to prove that wasn't correct, right? And I haven't seen any breakdown of black women, black male income in which black women make more than black men. I haven't seen anywhere. I look at this type of stuff all day. But that was a narrative being promoted in the relationship industrial complex, that black women make more money than black men. I can't find any data to support that, right? So these are the things that go on. These are the things that go. So if you move and believe in this type of stuff, right? What does your life look like in 25, 30, 40 years? Because these people are not going to be around for you to show up. Their goal is to soak the blood out of you now and move on to the next person. Because again, it becomes a feedback mechanism. If I destroy enough relationships now, I have a population in 5 years of people who are the byproduct of destroyed relationships that I could go back to. Because if you notice, many of these people have not moved through the space. They've been doing this stuff for years. They haven't moved. They have no desire to leave the space and go do something different. They're going to sit here because why? This is their assignment to destroy relationships. They're on their job, right? So they understand if I can do this to enough people, I can create a feedback mechanism to where I can destroy enough relationships in 2024 to where in 2030, I got a boom of people that are a byproduct of destroyed relationships. So then what we do is I forgot we call this in the markets. It's called a tailwind, but it's something to where you have a major increase in revenue because we've created this new product or this new service. And what it does is it drives a lot of new revenue through the business because now what we have is new demand. That's what they're doing, right? But let's get into these numbers. So what we looked at, let me get rid of this right here. Let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of this. Here's an article. We're going to put this in the description. The real reason young straight men aren't having sex, we're going to put that in the description. And we also going to put in the description this particular study from 2009 to 2018 showing that intercourse, penile vaginal intercourse was declining over the years based on this particular study, right? And they did this pretty much over a decade. I know 2018, those numbers are kind of old, but that's what the best I could get based on the amount of time I had. We'll put these in the description, right? So let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of this. So let's look at the minimum saving to retire in the cheapest 30 states, right? So if you're looking at retiring, how much savings you need to retire, right? Annual cost of living, annual Social Security income, right? Annual expenses after Social Security income, okay? What we did was we took the cheapest state, right? West Virginia, right? Home of the rednecks. Took the cheapest state, and we said, let's create a model to kind of understand what some of the costs are going to be to retire. So here's something I want you to understand. When they do this model, and I've always told people this modeling is not sufficient, doesn't factor in a lot of things because they want to scare you. We're looking at annual cost of living, right? $48,000, right? Okay, bam. So what we also got to factor in for somebody that's retiring is long-term care. Because eventually, if you live long enough, you're going to run into long-term care. So what we wanted to do was factor in long-term care. So what we did was we found this particular website called Genworth. We looked for long-term care, right, in the state of West Virginia. And what we look for is what's the monthly home health aid. We're talking about somebody coming to the house, so you're not going to be totally in a home because we look at the homes as 1111. That's monthly. I didn't want to scare you with those numbers because you multiply that by 12, you tell me what you come up with. So most people just cut off the internet once we do that. So we say we're not going to scare you with the numbers. I want you to stick around and get the lesson, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a home health aid, which is $47.67. Multiply that by 12. Because we understand, and I looked this up also, long-term care is not normally including standard cost of retirement per state. They don't factor that in because why? They don't want to scare you. But we're going to include it in this because we want to get a comprehensive understanding for our model, right? So home health aid, right? We know that annual cost of living, $48K, right? Let's go ahead and break it down. So you need 48 to retire, 48,451. We got the home health aid, West Virginia. So we retired in the cheapest state, West Virginia, right? Home of the rednecks, 57,204. That's added on, right? So now our total is going to be 105. That's what you need yearly. Can you come up with that? So you making $45,000, $50,000 a year, right? But when you retire, you're going to need 105 between what it costs yearly plus your home health aid. You're going to need 105. You're going to need, that's what you're going to need, right? You're going to need 105. Now, I'm not a Satanist because I do math, because my God is the God of mathematics, calculus, trigonometry, geometry, algebra, right? All of it. Credit it all. That's how he built the universe, right? So you can look at it the way you want to look at it, but my attitude is we're going to bring some math into the situation. So you're going to need 105,565 to retire, right? Now, I want you to understand something. We're going to subtract the Social Security because that's what you're going to get. So we know you're going to get to 22,437. So really what you need is 83,000. So you really need to have 83, not the 105. So it's 105 total with your social. We're going to back out the Social Security. You're going to need 83. Now, here's something else people don't talk about. That's why I say when you go to a lot of these planners, they're not really giving you a good workup, right? They're not giving you a good workup. We got to factor in inflation. See, so anytime you're thinking about retiring, they're giving you a snapshot based on today's numbers. Do they factor in the rate of inflation? You got to factor that in. So what we did was we went to the Fed because they give us all this good information. And we asked the Fed, right, what's the 10-year break-even inflation rate? What's the inflation over like a 10-year period? We got 2.33. Okay, bam. So for our particular model, what we did was we added it into the 83. So we want to know year to year, if we got a 2.33 inflation rate, we know that the rate of inflation is going to increase our expenses on a year-to-year basis, right? So what we realize now is we're going to need around 85.16 after the first year. So if we start off with 83, the next year we're going to need 85, which means what? Your money got to go up. How your money going to go up? You're not working no more. Because inflation is going to hit your money. So your bread got to go up some kind of way. So what I want you to understand is that if you look at any kind of financial modeling, based on what we know now in 2024 numbers, what it's going to cost to retire, why are you playing games with these people who don't care about you? They're just there to get what they want to get. We just seen with that one chick. She straight out came and say, man, I'm doing this for the money. I told y'all she was a 2-bit hustler. See straight through it. I've been outside in real life, right? I know a broke prostitute when I see one. Been told you that. No disrespect to her kids. We talking about her, right? So you listening to these people and they're not going to really be able to put you in a position to make the kind of money that you need to make because they're not talking about it. And we're looking at West Virginia numbers. If you look at this particular breakdown, right? Every time you look at this breakdown, let me go right here. Numbers keep going up, right? Annual cost of living goes up. So West Virginia, Oklahoma, Kansas, Alabama, right? Mississippi, one of the cheapest states in the union, Missouri, Arkansas, Iowa, Tennessee, Indiana, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Kentucky, North Dakota, Illinois, Nebraska, South Dakota. Numbers keep going up. We go cost of long-term care. Private room, $11,000. Home health aid, $4,000. Let's do Texas. Let's do Texas, USA. Home health aid, $5,000. So it goes up. Private room, $6,000. So we just gonna go state to state. Now you're gonna get based on city what it is. It can also break down by city, but it's a really, really good website to kind of get you to understand what that care is gonna be. But I would encourage you to do these type of things. Not assume it's gonna be a certain way, because many of us are working and we don't know what we're working towards. And we're thinking we're gonna get somewhere, and you may get there and find out that you're unprepared because it hasn't been discussed, right? Because nobody's talked about it. We just assume that this stuff is going to go the way I want it to go because that's the way I want it to go. And that's not how numbers work. So what a lot of people are going to be saying is that I'm going to need God to do a miracle of, in this scenario, a miracle of 85,000. No, I'm sorry. Let's do 83. Let's do the low number. I'm going to need God to do a miracle of 83,000 every year. Every year to the day you pass away. That's what you're asking for. See? So this is a conversation, if I'm a single person, I would be having as opposed to this other stuff. But that's just me. That's just me. So that's why I tell anybody that's listening to this, if you're in your 20s, you need to start thinking about retirement right now. You ain't got no time to wait till you're 40-something years old. Because if you're in your 20s, imagine what retiring is going to look like when you get 65 years old. Even if you want to retire early at 50, imagine what's going to look like. If you're in your 20s, you need to think about retiring right now. That's why I tell you that you really got to get your head around yourself real quick in this game, right? This game moving a million miles an hour. You really got to get your head together because this thing is moving so fast and it ain't slowing down for nobody. But what you're telling is that I need God to do a miracle of 83 pretty much every year of my lifetime pass away. Really, you need more than that, but let's just do the conservative number, right? So what part of that 83 is you going to have based on your job, the money that you got saved up, the money that you have in investments, what part of that 83 you going to have? And then how you going to make up the shortcoming, the gap? How you going to pull it off? So that's what I want you to understand. Now, here's something else we're going to talk about because we added in Social Security. Now, many people are talking about Social Security being out of here. Let's go ahead and kind of break that down real quick, and then we're going to go to this video, which we're talking about where we think Social Security is going, not in 30, 40, 50 years, but pretty much in around a decade or less. Let's get to that real quick.
Social Security's structure relies on the ratio of workers to retirees. There needs to be enough current workers paying in to fund the benefits of those aging into the program. So what happens when there are more people retiring than there are working and paying taxes? Well, that's exactly what we're dealing with now.
Back in 1950, there were 16 workers paying into Social Security for each person collecting benefits. But over time, the population has reduced that ratio of workers to beneficiaries. In the early 2000s, it was 3 workers per beneficiary. Going forward to the 2030s, it'll only be 2 workers for each retiring. That makes the program much, much more costly to fund.
Due to a decline in the birth rate after the baby boom, we now have more people receiving benefits than we have paying taxes. In 2010, when Social Security's cost was exceeding its non-interest income, the agency had to tap into the interest. That still wasn't enough, and in 2021, the agency started to dip into the actual trust funds. Now, that $2.9 trillion worth of Treasury securities is dwindling. So much so that the Social Security Board of Trustees projected in its annual report that the combined asset reserves of the trust funds will become depleted in 2034. That means if no action is taken before then, millions of Americans will receive only 80% of their benefits.
That would dramatically increase the number of retirees in poverty. So Social Security solvency isn't just a matter of federal bookkeeping, it is a matter of how we protect Americans who depend on this program the most.
At the end of 2022, the asset reserves had reached $2.83 trillion.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of show you that the government agency has projected by 2034, they're only going to be able to pay out around about 80% of your Social Security. So that's by 2034. Okay, so if you're not retiring that particular range, right, what is your Social Security going to look like? And so that's something that I wanted people to really examine, because again, you're being given a narrative that doesn't really include any numbers around the situation. It's just a bunch of people talking, right? And so if you only go to places where people just talk good and they're really good speakers and they're really good, they tell you what you want to hear, they buy into your bias, but there's never any type of financial modeling being established, but you're talking about a financial situation, I think that's going to be problematic for you. And so this is why I tell people that relationships are really, really important, because the only thing that may keep you out of poverty is your group and your community. I'm going to do it all by myself. I don't see how it's going to work, right? I really don't. So what we're going to ask now, the question is, without Social Security, you're going to need the whole 105. So we pull out the Social Security of 22,437. That gets pulled out of the situation totally, right? Now we can also work up you getting 80% of that. And then now you're going to get a different number. I think it's going to be 87. You need 87,000 if you just get 80% of the 22. But then we also can pull out in our model, pull out the whole Social Security, ask ourselves, what does a retirement look like because of that? So now you need the whole 105. Do you have that? Right? Well, you got to have it. You're perfect, right? And then that person with the person on the internet told, didn't that person on the internet tell you it's everybody else's problem? They at fault, yada, yada, yada. Here's how you make sure they don't do things. So you got to be secure on that. So you got 105 times every year you're going to be retired. You already got that on deck, or you got a way to get to that. Because that's what you're going to need. And that's based on today's numbers. That's not based on how price is going to look like in 20 years. So that's what I want you to understand. This is a real life issue that can be very easily understood with mathematics, right? But if I believe that what I believe in is an enemy of mathematics, I never bring out the math. And I did this with a piece of paper and a calculator. I'm the farthest thing from an accountant, but I knew how to create a model around this, right? Because it's the same type of stuff I do when I look at companies. So that's what I want you to understand, is that it's very unfortunate that we're past an era where a lot of people are going to be able to support themselves by themselves. That's just not the era that we're in. It's not the era that we're going to. And that's not going to change. Regardless of who's president, yada, yada. That's just the new era that we're going into. So let's go into the next part of the situation, right? Because we continue talking about people believing, based on this stuff that they listen to from this relationship industrial complex, that they can do what? The myth number 5, that you can do it all by yourself financially long term. Okay, let me pull this article up real quick. I'm sorry, let me go to this video real quick because we're going to kind of talk about that.
Homeless shelters run in Collier County by St. Matthew's House. And in the last year, they have noticed an alarming trend. More than 20% of the people who stay at this shelter every night are senior citizens, and that problem keeps getting worse.
It's all new to me, this environment. I never knew it. I'd end up here.
This has been Eddie McNulty's environment for the last week. The 68-year-old Collier County resident moved into the Campbell Lodge after using up his life savings just trying to scrape by in the last year.
But I just couldn't do the streets. Not me, But if I had to, I think it would have really changed me and pretty much put me down.
Like so many others, his life drastically changed when Hurricane Ian flooded his mobile home near Marco Island.
But I've been through a lot of hurricanes here. Nothing as devastating as this one that brought the water in on us. Took all my tools, everything, clothes, saved what I could at the time, vehicle gone. So pretty much knocked me out of the park.
We actually have one person that's over the age of 80 that's staying with us in our care.
Ben Bridges is the vice president of programs for St. Matthew's House. He says the lack of affordable housing has been a problem for years in Collier County, but the COVID-19 pandemic and Hurricane Ian have just made the problem worse.
We've seen our numbers increase exponentially to a point where it's a significant issue for our residents.
According to the most recent count, homelessness in Collier County has surged by 52% in the last year. 703 homeless people were counted, and of those, 195 or 28% were 60 and older. But experts say that number is just a fraction of the real count.
We can pass zoning measures to increase density. We can provide tax subsidies for developers to come in and build more senior affordable housing. But the reality is, until the community as a whole gets together and decides that we're going to do something about this problem, none of those things are going to happen.
McNulty says he's not looking for a handout, but he's grateful for St. Matthew's House as he's trying to start over.
Okay, so you got this individual, right, where he moved down south and he lost everything because of the situation going down in Florida. And he's an older man and he's homeless and he got to start all over again at his age, right? So we're talking about all his life savings is gone. Okay. Homes in Florida are not going to get cheaper. That's not going to happen. That won't happen. These people telling you on the internet that, the real estate market is getting ready to crash. I mean, that could happen, but if that's what you're waiting on, you might be waiting a long time, especially in the state of Florida, because there's more people moving into Florida, which means what they're going to do is they're going to put more demand on inventory. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So again, this guy's by himself for whatever reason, right? Don't mean he was an unproductive person. Don't mean that he tried to be a player his whole life and yada, yada, yada. Things happen in life, but now he's here, right? And I can show you multiple situations of women in this situation, the whole nine. Here's something I want you to understand. We're going in America where what they're getting ready to do, this is my own theory. That's why I don't have time to worry about like the other stuff. I worry about like the real financial stuff. What I really believe that they're going to do is they're going to cut off all social support. What I mean by that is a lot of social programs that was used to support people, to make sure that they didn't fall into poverty, to make sure that they didn't just totally end up on the street. They're going to cut all that out. This is where this country's going, right? So then what we're going to see is we're going to see more elderly poverty. We're going to see more elderly people that are going to be homeless, and everybody is just going to just adjust to it. And they're going to hope that it doesn't end up being them. The question is, how do you stop it from being you? Because you're going to get old one day if you're lucky. So how do you stop from ending up in those situations, right? When you get 50, 60, 70 years old, can you withstand something like a hurricane destroying your mobile home or destroying your house? Do you have a way to make yourself whole? Because if you're older, but you're already financially strapped, anything can take you out. Now you're on the street with no social support. That's where they're bringing this country to, right? And so this is what I want you to understand. A lot of this stuff is not going to benefit you. But you can't say, because you all the 169 people on YouTube right now today, what you can't say is that you weren't told. So now you can choose to keep dealing with the mother folks if that's what you want to do, and keep taking their counsel and whatever they got so much. Keep on, right? But what I'm telling you is that this is where they're going, right? So ain't no in the world I'm going to be listening to somebody that already married and they already got money telling me I don't need to be worrying about no relationship, and they already got that together. Because what do I have as a safety net if things go wrong for me? But they telling me the other person got to be perfect for you to even deal with them. And here's how all the ways, you can make sure you don't get caught up in this situation and just making a bunch of stuff up to keep their situation going. This system is going to get more and more predatory as time goes on. Because why? That's going to be the only way a lot of people know how to make money. What you've seen with this young chick, with that thing, that is a preview of what you're getting ready to see more of. You're going to see this system get even more and more predatory, right? And people are going to be just trying to really figure out how they can beat somebody else out their money so they can have something, because they're not going to see a lot of opportunity out here. That's the way this thing is going. Okay. Let me show you an article real quick, because I want to show you another example of what direction this situation is going. Here's an article from Hank Yuri. I don't know if that's a proper word. This is from 2023. 40% of Koreans 66 and up are living in poverty, the highest rate in the OECD. South Korea has the highest rate of poverty in old age for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. As of 2020, 4 out of 10 South Koreans aged 66 and older fall below the poverty line. The poverty rate often worsens as people get older. According to the report put out by the OECD, 40.4% of South Koreans aged 66 and older fall into this category. That's the highest elderly income poverty rate among the 37 nations analyzed in the report, right? The average age income poverty around OECD nations is 14.2%, right? South Korea has persistently remained at the top of the rankings since 2009 when they started this report. After Korea, the other countries are going to be Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. The US and Australia are 22% and 22.4%. In Korea, they got 40% people 66 and up living in poverty, right? Because South Korea don't care about their people. South Korea is a country to where you got a small group of families. They run everything. They get all the money. Everybody else got to figure it out, right? So it's very, very hard to have anything in those countries. So what I really want to encourage you is this idea that you're going to do it all by yourself, that you're perfect and everybody else got to be perfect to even deal with you, that in every scenario, everybody else is at fault and you're the person that's always in the right. And if everybody else could just get their act together, they can finally, deal with you because you got everything together, but everybody else is messed up. And everything is just cut off culture. I just got to cut everybody off to get my act together. Okay? That's cool. I'm not against it. That's what you believe in. You better start stacking your paper. And you better be real good at stacking it. I mean, you got to stack it to the ceiling. Because you're going to need $1 million plus to retire. Right? You're going to need $1 million plus sitting on the side. Right? And then you got to hope nothing crazy don't happen. Then you got to hope you don't need nobody. Right? So that's what I want you to understand. So I'm always going to be passionate about people working together. I'm always going to be passionate about community. I'm always going to be passionate about people trying to get understanding. I'm always going to be passionate about people figuring out how to reconcile situations because people need people. Right? People need people. The most valuable thing on this planet are human beings. Right? So the idea to where human beings and human relationships are just disposable, right? Because I'm up right now, you might not always be up. And things can happen in your life real fast. Your life could change at the drop of a dime. But the relationship industrial complex is never going to tell you that because they don't make their money by telling you that. They make their money by making sure that you by yourself. So they can work on you and make sure you stay by yourself. And again, when you have these movements and you have these people, what their assignment is to figure out how to split men and women, you got to ask them who they really working for. I know who they working for. I'm not going to tell y'all because I don't want to turn into that type of video. But I know who these folk really work for. Really in real life, who they really work for. Well, all their financial success came from that narrative. I know who these folk work for. I don't care how they dress it up. They can't fool me. I know how to read too good. Right? So that's all we're going to talk about. Anybody want to come through? Any disagreements? Anybody want to tell me that my data is skewed and it's off? That's cool too. Comments, questions, or disagreements, you could come through and we're going to get up on out of here. Let me get that in there. That's pinned. Okay, so when it come through, that's pinned in the chat. Got that up. Let me get rid of the rest of this stuff. So Raygun, man, appreciate the $2 super chat, bro. Appreciate you coming through being a mod. Terrence, man, appreciate you coming through being a mod. The $4.99 super chat. Goddess Noel, appreciate it. Spending a Saturday evening with us. Happy to do it. Really, really enjoy doing this type of content because it allows me to not only talk about the topic, but try to create some type of model that maybe people can apply to their own situation, because I'm very passionate about this. And I wish I would have known this stuff a lot earlier. Nobody was talking about this stuff when I was younger. So I really wish I would have known this earlier. Relationship industrial complex is wild. I feel it's definitely a complex, you know, and it's really based on people failing, which is very unfortunate. B-Raf in Malibu, shout out back in making people think critically. Most definitely trying to, man. Appreciate the $10 super chat. Girls and pearls, appreciate you coming through. We need to invest a little below our means, live simply in a modesty. I feel you. I feel you. You know, but everybody, you know, people want to live different lifestyles. But I agree with you on that. Jay Wood, man, appreciate the $5 super chat. Okay, so that's linked in the chat. Anybody want to come through? Come through. You got your opportunity. So Jay Preston, man, what's up with it? Miss Brittany Barnett, what's going on with it out to Lockport, Illinois? Robbie Rob, the Tech Avenger, what's going on? GC, what's up with it? Yeah, I haven't heard about that chick since she created those videos. Yeah, she did her job and she left. That was her job. You know, so she did her little job, man. She got up on out of here because we ain't heard nothing from her since then. She got time to make 100 videos. Gerald Davis, man, what's up with it? Edge Deep, what's up with it? Flo Jersey, what's up with it? Miss Lovely Ava, how you feel? Carlos Hines, what's up with it? L Light, exactly. He is the God of order. System, structure, he's the God of all of that. You know. But, you know, everybody see it different. Seems like sexual revolution leads to less sex between humans and more sex with themselves. I feel you. Ant Dog, what's up with Ant Dog? That's a fact. Me and my lady be in bed by 8 p.m. because of our 2-year-old. That's her bedtime. I feel you. I agree with you. You know, I know a lot of people that's married, especially ones that got kids. Everything on a routine, everything is real structured, and it's just very routine because they got to because of their child. You know, they're not ripping and running because the child can't rip and run. So that's how they live in their life. So I don't know. I don't know what people expect out here, but I do know, Ant Dog, a lot of people don't raise their kids. So we see stories like that where people just, you know, their kids become secondary to what they want to do with their life. So I think they look for that because their attitude is, I don't care, they got a child in the house. Because I've seen that, you know, people be leaving their kids and put the kids off on grandma or whatever, so why they go live their life. So I guess some people in the attitude is think that kid don't change nothing. But the people I was raised around, once they had children, everything slowed down. Like for real, for real. GC says nobody's been able to put any data to support that narrative. Definitely. There's no data to support it. There is no data to show that black women make more money than black men on average, or even their median income is greater than black men. There's no data to support it. They'll never be able to put it out. But that, when I came on this YouTube, that was real big in the relationship spaces. They was pushing that. Like it was a fact. And there was nothing factual about it. Michelle Green says in Kansas, $3,000 a month for home senior care. And that's considered low, but that's still like that's what, $36 a year. That's a good little piece of money. And here's the thing though, Michelle Green, the cost just going to keep going up. So if it's $3,000 a month now, imagine what it'd be at the end of the decade. So people are in a situation where they have to retire with so much of a gap to withstand the increase in costs. And I just think that's going to be difficult. Right. But I just think that's the world we're living in now. You know what I'm saying? It used to be that you could kind of retire on a fixed income and ride that for a good little piece of it. Then it's just we're in a different space now. And I think people having this idea that they're going to do it all by themselves, they just better make a lot of money, like a lot. So what people are going to have to accept, maybe if they're going to do it all by themselves, they can't spend any money until they retire. They just got to stack bread. And then they retire. Now I can finally spend some money at 65. But between 20-something when they start working and 65, they can't spend no money because you're going to need it all for your retirement. So T. Chris says, average like $14,000. My honors are only black and senior healthcare home in Palm Springs. I believe that, especially in Palm Springs. It's a grip. What's up to Journey to Jasmine? What's up with it? AM1, what's up with it? GC says you're going to need 2 to 3 jobs and good investments to be able to retire. Most definitely. That's what we're going with it. Journey, you're exactly right. Everything from the New Deal is going to be eradicated. Definitely. I agree with you. That's where they're going with this. That's exactly where they're going. You know, they're going to get rid of all these programs. That's where they're going with it. So it is what it is. They may keep a few, but over time, they're going to get rid of all of them. Right? It's just going to be a slow move towards that. But in 15 years, they'll pretty much all be gone. Journey Jasmine says, multi-generational homes, investments, earning more, relying on each other. I feel you. I agree with you there. Cloud with TJ says you need 1.2 million to 1.4 million at retirement to be comfortable. I believe you probably is about right. That's probably baseline. That's probably baseline. But who knows what that looks like in 5 years? You know what I'm saying? Because once you're fixed income and you're no longer earning anymore, you're very vulnerable to any increase in inflation. You know, so it's just rough. Journey Jackson said they work for the small hats. I feel you. They working for somebody. So T here says, I'm 55 years old. I've been on this path for years. My grandma always telling me to buy land, pay off your house early. So my earliest I did just that. Congrats to you, man. Keep doing your thing, bro. We're going towards neo-feudalism and not so far future. I agree with you. I think we're going towards techno-feudalism. I think we're going to a techno-feudalism state, but I agree with you there. We're going towards that. It really, we're low-key already there, but I just don't think a lot of people can see it. But we're going towards techno-feudalism, definitely. Right? We're all pretty much low-key already there, but yeah, definitely I agree with you on that. Yeah, I agree with you, Journey J. I did that on the video too. I did on the video. They say that black women make more than black men, but in the same breath, they say there's an income gap between men and women. Yeah, but you know, Journey, these people, it is not, when you really just talk to them, you realize that, you know, I don't know, like lines, I think wires aren't connected with some people. You know, it's just what makes them feel good at the moment. But I agree with you there, because those two situations can't be true at the same time. Girls and Pearl says, my mother had a pension and retired off 4K for 30 years. She was lucky. I agree with you. You know, I got family members on pensions. They got lucky. You know, they got lucky that they had pensions. They got lucky that those pensions stay solvent. And they got lucky that they retire early enough to be able to maintain their situation as time went on. You know, but they retired now probably almost 20, 25 years ago. So it's a different scenario back then. But they like the last generation of people that could do that. We're in a different space now. Some people still gonna be able to do it, but not as many as did it when these people I'm talking about did it. So we just in a different world now. But that's how the rest of the world looks, especially in this part of the world. You know, this part of the world, we exclude Canada, you start going south, man, ain't no such thing as retiring. You just work till you die. You know, go to Mexico and talk to somebody about retiring from jobs. They'd be like, what are you talking about? Guatemala, El Salvador, ain't no retiring. You just work till you get too sick to work. Deli says we need more. Bread will be $10 a loaf. $10 oranges. 10 oranges at $10. And when they remove the undocumented, it's going to get worse. Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, GC says a lot of these come to offer pensions no more. Yeah, the 401k was really designed to replace the pension. It was really supposed to supplement it, but now it replaces it. They're not going to give people pensions no more. That's why when you saw the machinist from is Boeing, which tickers BA, and they saying they're going to hold out for their pension. I was like, y'all not going to get no pension. That's not going to happen. Y'all might get a 8% match on y'all 401k, but they're not going to give y'all no pension. They're not going to do that. It's not going to happen. So yeah, a lot of these companies, they have no desire because they that money was coming out of them. You know what I'm saying? Like that was money that was coming from the company and it being invested, and they don't want to do that anymore. They done with that, right? So they through with that. So no, they gonna put everybody on 401ks because they get deals through these particular companies to bring their people into a 401k plan, and people don't talk about that. So Mr. 86 says the loss Kamala had over the next 6 years of policies I'm conservative, but this is what libertarian paradise is about. It's all about self-planning. Yeah, but I think what's going to happen regardless of who was in office. I think this is where it's going, regardless of who was in office. Because a lot of these programs based on birth rates aren't sustainable, right? They're just really not sustainable. So I think that's the challenge, is that what we've had was a lot of social programming that really couldn't support our environment. Right. And I think a lot of it was social programming that could not support our environment. For America to work, we needed people to get married and have kids based on how it was currently working. So now, once we have a lot of social programming that's designed to break that up, the social programs don't work because they don't have a way of getting funded. So I just think it was going to happen regardless of who won the president. I think maybe Kamala would have put a different spin on it, but it was probably still going to happen. So Goddess Noah says, I think the toxic relationship space on YouTube will implode. It will play itself out. Similar to how reality TV is on the last leg. People are involved in not consuming that trash content anymore. I feel you. I don't necessarily think it will. I think that there's always going to be a need for people to have their mistakes confirmed. Because I look at it like politics. Politics to me has some of the most negative messages in the world, and it's never going to go anywhere. And to me, one thing I learned from people that made a lot of money on the internet is that relationships, diet, fitness, and finance are always going to make money on the internet just based on how you do it. Because I think what we call the relationship space, it allows everybody to have an opinion, where people kind of go into the finance space and they're more insecure about talking. But if we do a video on, this relationship topic, instead of having 165, I have 1,065. Because everybody's very passionate about it. Most people aren't passionate about how much money they're not making. They don't even want to face it. So I think that space will always be viable. It'll just reinvent itself. It'll reshape itself because of how many people are passionate about it, because it gives them, especially now because of the internet, it gives a lot of people a platform to emote and to vent without any real accountability around what they're doing. And that's how most of those spaces work. So we'll see how it plays out, but I don't think they're going anywhere. What's up to Miss Alexander? She said a relationship guru saying military jobs into the career. Meanwhile, millions of sub-50 retired play plus TSP. I feel you. I feel you. Terrence say they're going to move age of retirement to 70. Y'all believe that? They're going to have to. They're going to just try to stretch it out to make sure Social Security can last longer. Right? So I believe you there. And some people are going to be working, like I say, we go to other parts of the world, Mr. Terrence, and people be working at 70. We working older than that. They got to do what they got to do to make money. The idea that the government should provide their citizens a pension is really an idea that comes out of socialism. So a lot of people just feel like that's just not what the government should be involved in. Like any form of, really any kind of medical care, they just feel like the government shouldn't be involved in any of that. And that's really what they're going to push America towards. But the people that are pushing that, they already got all the money. So they ain't got to worry about that. So I just really think we're going to see America move more towards Nigeria, where you got a really, really small group of people that got a lot of money because of their relationships with government. And the majority of people don't have anything. And I really think that's what America's going towards. And what's weird is that a lot of Anglos were scared of Black leadership, but they're going to get a model of what goes on in certain countries in Africa with Anglo leadership. And they're going to get walked right into it because they're never going to see it. But that's what you're going to get. Because if you go to a lot of countries in Africa, the only people got money, people got real close ties to government. You don't really have a lot of like small business owners making like $1 million a year doing their thing. It's people, everybody is linked there with government. That's how they make all their money. Right? So that's kind of, to me, where they're going in this country. Economies built on straw families, definitely. Yeah, it's hard to have really strong economic systems if we don't have stability. So if we don't have some level of stability, it's just going to be difficult. And I just think people don't realize that they want to do what they want to do. That's what they've been sold. But big up the journey to Jasmine. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Oh, hey, how are you doing? I wanted to say thank you again for this video. I'm actually you actually scared me a lot today. I wanted to ask you, have you ever considered the scenario where the U.S. progresses more like some of the older capitalist societies in Europe, where they do continue safety nets, but they continue the same wealth inequality that they've always had, or it gets worse?
So could you give me the name of some of those societies?
So like, I think the UK, I don't have perfect data on this, but UK, Netherlands, France, they're all broke still, I think. But the places where there are higher taxes on a lot of people, the reason I'm saying this because a lot of people think that those places have more equality, but they actually still have massive levels of inequality, even with the safety nets they have. So they have safety nets, but it's not like it's not a luxurious life. You know, it's more like you can get the most basic form of healthcare that you don't have to pay for, but it's not. If you could buy healthcare, you wouldn't have that. I hope I'm making any sense. I'm generalizing a lot here. My point is, have you thought about that? Have you considered that scenario where the country essentially taxes the rich and taxes companies, or taxes VAT and transactions like share buybacks, but it doesn't make it where you're going to retire comfortably. It just means you're not going to be destitute.
Understand what you're saying. So that's a great question. So, so here's one of the challenges that I'm echoing, I think, on your end. When we're looking at a lot of the European countries, especially Western European countries, they built a lot of those models to me as a response to revolution, where they were more worried about if we don't take care of our population, they will kill everybody in the monarchy. So to me, that's kind of was their attitude on their evolution. Well, America to me had a different evolution, and I don't ever see the rich in America agreeing to be taxed. Now, people say, well, they pay a lot of taxes, but they really don't, because I have a CPA, and I know just with the little bit of money that I can make, what you can do to avoid tax. And I would say avoid tax, what you can do to mitigate tax. So I know what large organizations have the ability to do to mitigate tax. So the rich really don't pay a lot of taxes if they have any kind of adequate accounting counsel. So I don't never think the rich in America are going to ever vote to get themselves taxed. What I think, and I talked about earlier, maybe before you got on, I think that America is going to probably look more like Nigeria, where you're going to have a really small group of people that have connections to government that are billionaires, and the majority of the population don't have 2 cents to rub together.
I'm from Nigeria.
Okay, so I think that's what you're going to see. Yeah, so I think that's what you're going to get. So you have cities in Nigeria where the naira keeps falling, where they have to subsidize gas just so regular people can buy gas at a really extreme rate, where they don't have the ability to refine their own gas because the people in government don't want it, even though the brother built the refinery. I think that's what America's going to go to where if you don't have really, really strong connections with government, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to really be successful. So if you don't have those connections, you're just going to be on the outside looking in. So it's going to be look more like a fascist state, right? Kind of what you saw like in Central South America in the 70s and the 80s, as opposed to something that we're currently seeing in Europe.
It's interesting that you don't seem to think that the wealthy people here will ever be as threatened as the monarchy were.
No, they won't, because here's the issue. They know how the monarchy lost their position. So that's not going to happen again.
Oh.
See what I'm saying? Because one of the benefits of America, but especially the West, is America was able to look at all the mistakes that everybody else made. So they're not going to make that same mistake.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? So they won't make the same mistake that France made, or they won't make the same mistake that the UK, or they won't make those mistakes because they know what those mistakes were. So they won't make those mistakes. But no, the rich here have already shown before that they're willing to deal with a really, really poor population. The only reason they really increased the standard of living for poor here is because they wanted to industrialize America. And so we needed a healthier, more educated, more stable population to industrialize America. They don't need that anymore because they're getting ready to roll out technology and automation, yada, yada, yada. So they don't need these people anymore. So these people can be dirt poor like they are in other parts of the world, and America run just fine.
Well, I don't have any words for you today, Dave. I was also gonna say, if you can, maybe it would be great for you to tell us more about your take on the techno-feudalism, because you're one of very few people who have even used that term on the internet. It hasn't caught on yet, but I believe
you already see it with how wealth has been built through technology, and then how they leverage that as control. So you see with Amazon, you're going to see that more with a lot of our chip companies. So they use technology to generate that wealth, but they also control. So we know that if anybody that sells anything on Amazon controls everything. So you're seeing that type of feudalism, what we saw in Western Europe at one time, which made everybody want to come over here. But as opposed to being done the way they did it back then, they're just doing it with technology. I just call it techno-feudalism.
Do you think that it's gonna now become a, kind of like the passport bros? You think it's now going to become a possible strategy for Americans to basically arbitrage retirement? Where I've already seen this happen. Let me say it better. I've actually seen this happen where some older Americans, they move from high cost cities to very low cost cities in America, or semi-rural areas in their old age, like in their 50s and 60s. You go from your $500,000 house to a place where you can buy the same house for $200,000. What do you think about that? People doing that more going forward as they get older.
I mean, I think that's a great strategy. I mean, that's what people used to do in Florida. So Florida was really full of people coming from the Northeast, selling their home, coming down to Florida, buying a cheaper home, and just living off their retirement. So I always think that's going to be a possibility, because the country in America is so big that there's always going to be cheap land somewhere. It's just, do people want to live that way? Because I just think we have so many people that are accustomed to living a certain style of life that they may not want to live a slower, kind of more rural type lifestyle. But that's always going to be available because of how large America is. There's so much land here, it's ridiculous. So at any time, you can move to Mississippi, you can move to Arkansas, you can move to parts of Alabama and live a really, really inexpensive lifestyle, but you just have to be comfortable living like that.
Just we got to make trade-offs, I suppose.
Definitely. But I think that will be something that a lot of people are going to have to look into, because I just think, and I'm seeing this in Metro Atlanta, to actually live in the city is just going to be very, very expensive for the average person. So a person's going to have to either say, I'm just going to have to accept not having anything and living in the city, or maybe moving a little bit farther out and maybe having something, but I don't get the conveniences of living in a larger city. Because you may be old enough to remember, for years, people had to pay a premium to live inside New York City. And a lot of people paid it, but I saw a lot of people over the years just move out because they got tired of paying it. And I think we're seeing that with a lot of the other larger cities, to where you're going to just have to pay a premium to get everything that you get inside those cities.
Yeah, I'm in Houston.
Okay.
I'm in Houston, and I see houses where you can buy a $300,000 house, and what is it? 1/3 of it is the land. if you buy in certain places, but then somewhere else further out, you can get a $200,000 house that's the exact same, but because the land is much cheaper. So I definitely see that. I've seen that phenomenon in Houston alone. It's just getting worse.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely worse. All right, thank you. I just thank you again for everything you do, and I just had to tune in when I saw it. I got you on my notifications now, so appreciate your work.
All right, man. Be easy.
Take care. Bye.
All right. And so big up to the wealth scientist out of Houston via Nigeria. Big up to him. So let's keep going. Doom. Drop 16. What's up with it? Relationship conversations are low-hanging fruit. I agree. They're not going nowhere though, but they are low-hanging fruit. It's the easy way to get traction. It was like this in the 1800s, most definitely. There was a time in America to where the average American was dirt poor. And it took government programs to raise their standing of living. And I think that's something that's not talked about. But it was government programs that did it. Katrina says the rich can just borrow money to live. Borrowed money isn't income. I feel you. For the new six-figure earners, do you see inflation squeezing us out to maintain this the time that we need to bring in multiple streams of income? Well, six figures is between $100,000 and $900,000. So it kind of depends on where you fall at. But like where I'm at, $100,000 ain't really like all the money in the world. So six figures is such a wide range. I think it gets overstated on the internet because it's really between 100,000 and like 900,000. So it's a difference between making $100,000 and making $500,000 a year, right? And then there's a little bit difference between making $500,000 and making $950,000 a year. So I just think there's such a wide range there. So low 100K earners, it depends on where you're at. In some places like where I'm at, making low 100K is not really a lot of money. You're not broke, but you're not up like that. You know what I'm saying? It's really not like that. So what I really would encourage people to do is try to figure out how to continue to earn more money, but also how to invest money. But it really is going to take relationships. It's going to take partnerships. It's going to take community. I just think that we're going into a stage 86 to where it's going to take community to withstand a lot of this stuff. And it's going to take real relationships. Not I like people because they're doing what I want them to do at this time. Real relationships to where I'm willing to stick with people through thick or thin. Right? Because we know that relationships go up and down. They're not always up. But I think we've been socialized a lot to where as soon as a person and somebody else have a little bit of a disagreement or falling out, everything gets burnt to the ground. I don't think that's going to work in this new America. I think people are going to have to really start worrying about building community and having people around them that they know are with them. Not just with them because they like me right now. Because things going to change over time. But the low 100K kind of depend on what market you at. It's really not that much money, in my opinion. And we know that most people don't make that. But in a lot of markets, that's really not all that. L. Vickers, you're 100% correct. You can't minimize the need for healthcare as you get older. You're 100% correct. I know a guy in Alabama. He was looking for an endocrinologist, and he couldn't find one. So that's the downside. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a trade-off. You live in more rural areas. It's going to be harder to find first-class healthcare that you need a lot of times as you get older. Right? So that's why I told you America is going to look more like, in my opinion, Nigeria than Western Europe. Right? Because I know if I'm in Lagos and I got money, I can get really, really good healthcare. But if I move and go outside of that to other parts of Nigeria, what does a healthcare footprint look like? Even if I got money, what does it look like? But it's a trade-off, right? So it is what it is, you know, but I agree with you there. That's one of the reasons why I've been hesitant to move to other countries is because I don't like their healthcare footprint. They got their public healthcare footprint is almost non-existent, right? And that's something I know to look for, right? And that's one of the reasons why I've always been hesitant to move to another country because I don't like their public healthcare footprint either in some of their major cities. I don't like it. I just really think it's not sufficient. People talk about how cheap it is, but it's really not that advanced compared to America. Americans have really, really good access to healthcare, especially if you stay in big cities, like really good access to healthcare. If you can pay for it, they can get it for you. You got people in other parts of the world, they got to fly to another country to get healthcare, and they got money because they cannot get it in their country. It doesn't exist. Miss Allen, I feel you. Keep earning money. I feel you. The American dating complex is people dating for shallow reasons. I agree with you. Journey Jasmine says the message is needed these times when people are preaching the gospel of selfishness. We need community. That's how we've been successful historically. I agree with you. We need community. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. But I just think that value, America is very much an individualistic type society. People buy into that. And I think a lot of people have bought into that idea that they're going to get it all by themselves, or they build relationships to really, they're not, it's very much like, if I just like this person at this time, stuff like that. And they're not really built to withstand long-term, right? Where I might not like this person that much, but I'm in a relationship with them. So we just going to stick it out. I don't think people really built for that anymore. I'm not saying they're not. I just think it's different now. Okay, so we got Xavier coming through. Let me put my headphones on real quick. Hey, Xavier, you got to unmute yourself, bro. You can hear me? Xavier, I can't hear you. Okay, Xavier, do this, man. Come through. My fault. What's up with it, man?
Cool.
My bad, bro. Yeah, I can hear you. My fault.
You're good.
Okay.
First off, I just want to say, we actually spoke before. I popped on your thing. I was talking about Latin America business.
Yeah, I remember that. You talking about Argentina?
Yep. Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was funny you were talking about. You have a really good channel. Like you're very short. You're straight to the point, and you have a lot of good perspective. I genuinely enjoy your channel.
I appreciate it.
But when you were talking about the dating thing for like the dating complex, I'm in my late 20s, and I've been talking to some people on the YouTube spaces for a while, even also in real life as well. Or I've told them, I'm like, look, I found it very interesting when the times I get on TikTok, I've seen the audience is not people my age bracket nor younger. It's mostly, even on Clubhouse, I don't get on that often, but a guy I'm friends with, he had mentioned it to me, and one day I went on there. It's mostly like 35, 45, like millennial Gen X generation, just bickering with each other about 50-50 relationships and who's doing what and who's tricking and who has game. And I had to sit back one day. I was like, none of y'all are, how do I put this? You're at the age where like you should be thinking about retirement, saving money, trying to gain assets, secure your wealth. But y'all are over here. It's not everybody. It's definitely not everybody. But there's a healthy segment of people. Maybe they're just loud and they're a minority. They're moving in such a way that's like, it's like they're still stuck in their like 20s. And that's telling me as an American, as a younger Black American guy, that there's some type of like, I don't know, educational deficit here in terms of like where people are seeing themselves in terms of like their own personal growth and their relationship to like, self-awareness to like the world. But two, it also shows me that there might be some financial hardships that some of these people might run into as they get older, where they're not aware right now. But give you an example, when I went to Afrotech maybe like a month ago, I want to say it was like over half of the audience there was African.
Okay.
And seeing them, how they move, it's very strategic versus when I'm looking at some of like my white colleagues and some of my Black colleagues that are Black American or white American, it's a bit more, I don't know, either unintentional or it's like that weird internet, like we're just bickering with each other for 45 minutes about stuff I don't hear my Indian friends or even some of my African friends talk about as much, about who's going to pay the bill or who's going to, bend the knee, so to speak, in a relationship dynamic.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. So do you think when you're looking at like the Indians and the Africans, that segment of the population is different than the segment of the population that you hear talking about the stuff on Clubhouse? Because we do know, if we look at like India and Africa, they do have a large degree of their population that's really not that productive. They don't have a really high education level, but those aren't going to be the people that's coming to Afrotech. So do you think you're just looking at different segments of the population, so they may not necessarily be comparable? So they're all Black Americans, Nigerians, Indians, but they're different segments of the population. Because I can tell you for a fact, Nigeria got a lot of people that are very unproductive.
I know. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to take like their talented 10th and then compare it to like America's average.
Yeah.
However, I'm gonna be honest, like some of these people are in the same room. They're not necessarily the people I saw at Afrotech entirely. This is what I'll say I saw at Afrotech. It was the Africans were kind of tribing up. It was like you had your like West African kind of conglomerate, you had your East African conglomerate. And to me, it seemed like some of the African Americans and some of the Africans as well were still talking about like diversity, equity, inclusion, and like inclusion of other groups. Like they kept using the term Black and brown, and I'm like, dude, the Hispanics just don't really care about you that much.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of like you need to be honest and just tribe up and just focus on your own group. But as far as comparableness, yeah, I mean, I will tell you flat out, like I'm friends with a lot of the Patel family members. So like I'm aware of like that they're not necessarily like one-to-one. But you're still in the country, you still have to compete with some of these people. You might not compete to the same level, but to me, it's just the lack of awareness I see on just a general basis of like white Americans and black Americans of just like, let's, pragmatically work together. Whereas when I talk to some of the immigrant groups, they seem a bit more aware of like, this is an economic zone, even if they're not. I'll give you an example. When I talk to some Hispanics, they're not the brightest bulbs in the box, but they still are aware of like, hey, I'll come here and put my kids in such a situation so that when they get to a certain age, they don't have to go do this job I'm doing, and they can kind of leapfrog into this white collar thing and make X amount of money.
Yeah, so I agree with that, but I still think it's the people that you're exposed to. So I do. So with the Indians, I do often say I think that their top performers do come to America. I think they haven't been incentivized to come to America. With Africans and Nigerians, I think it's a little bit different, and maybe because I have different experiences. I've met all type of Africans. They're all not upwardly mobile. Like a lot of them coming over here just to do crime.
Yeah, no, I've run into.
Yeah, see what I'm saying? That's just, especially if you live in the Houston area. Like it's just reality. Same thing. In the DMV area, definitely also in New York City. So I just think it may be the exposure. Like I said, some of the circles that you're running in, because again, it's something I've always talked about with Africa. If they really had such a large population of really high performers like that, I'm not sure those countries will look that way.
Oh yeah, no, I would agree with you on that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is anecdotal. I'm not saying like it's like I will admit to like, yeah, most of it is anecdotal. But I've run into Black Americans that were I don't want to make this seem like I'm just like down in Black Americans. No,
I'm not saying that. I'm just
yeah.
I mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying there are Black Americans. I've run into more of them like in the South, like specifically in Texas a lot for some reason, that are very like astute and they like kind of know what's up. But like, yeah, I don't think like all Black Americans are off base or all white Americans. I'm just saying I don't see some of the immigrant kids that they have their own dating issues. That's a story for another day. I've heard about the dating issues Indians have and Africans have. I'm not saying they're immune to it. I'm just saying I don't see them in that dating industrial complex thing of like, buying XYZ's game course or entertaining as much of the whole like sprinkle 50-50. I see that typically being older people that are, if they have an immigrant background, they're like the second generation kid or the first generation kid, and they're like I said, they're not in their 20s. I thought it was people in their 20s, but then I showed up and I was like, a little weird that it's people that are like would be a manager at their job, whether it be a warehouse job or a white collar job, still having this conversation about dating people off of swag and kind of aspirational titles, not being realistic with themselves.
I agree with you there. But like I said, I think it's the population. So I think we have different populations that are into different things. Because I think one of the biggest issues that's going to impact Nigeria from a continental standpoint, one is they don't have any understanding how to do economic policy. They just don't have a clue. And I really think what's going to really attack them on the social level is, especially Africa, Nigeria, also Uganda, is you're starting to see a really, really big increase in pornography.
Really? Okay.
And they're investing in that space really heavily. And I think that's going to undermine a lot of their country over time. And they're not aware of it, but it will. And they're very aggressive going into that space, especially Nigerians. Nigerians make a really, really strong push in pornography.
Are you saying like OnlyFans type of pornography or?
It doesn't matter. They're across the board. OnlyFans, Pornhub, they're across the board. They're on every porn platform that is available. They're producing their own pornography. They're beaming it out across the world. And I think that's going to undermine a lot of their population. So I think they're already under, the average Nigerian is already under a lot of stress. Yeah. That's not going to help them. So I'm already seeing now from a future trend standpoint, how that's going to be detrimental to their country.
I would agree with you there. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying like, if we're talking about just in the US, like I've noticed in the America itself, like I've run into quite a few Nigerians that get swept into a lot of BS. I don't want to just focus on them, but I'm just saying like I've noticed, like I said, when I was even at Afrotech, I saw quite a bit of just African groups in there being more pragmatic about dating options. They were going to entertain that, about not so much companies, but they seem, to me at least, a little bit more focused. Whereas when I got online, I saw some of the African American people even how they talked about the conference, it was a bit more social orientated around like who's cute or who has swag or after parties and so on. The Africans were definitely a part of that. I'm just saying it seemed a bit more, to me, a little bit balanced. But I could be wrong with my.
No, I mean, I respect your perspective. And it could be, again, because of the Africans that are there, maybe how they've been conditioned and maybe how they see that opportunity. I do think that a lot of Americans, because we have so much opportunity here, we get jaded.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, we know that. Yeah, well, we know in Nigeria they don't necessarily have the same type of opportunity. So I think it's a bigger deal to them, and they understand the opportunity that's being presented in front of them, and they come from a totally different situation because of Nigeria and because of the failures of that particular nation state.
Yeah,
where they know they can't take their eyes off the ball. Well, I think America has been running on autopilot for so long. I think most Americans can't see a downturn. Nigeria, to me, is a failed state.
Yeah.
So the United States is not nowhere near that point. So I just think Americans don't have a seriousness about what they're trying to do because we don't come from a failed state.
You don't think that some of these other groups might operate in such a way in some of these spaces while, not the whole population, but you have a good chunk of your population caught up in social media and cloud and, like I said, the dating industrial complex to some degree. These other groups might say, okay, let's, pull my cousin into this cybersecurity job. And before you know it, the industry is, 25% or not 25, like 85% immigrant group of, Sri Lankan or Indian or Chinese or Ghanaian or Nigerian. You don't think that that's a potential in the future of a group coming in and dominating some of these high income, sectors?
Oh, I think that's a reality. I did a video talking about that, and it was something that was on Twitter a few days ago where in a lot of the tech, I don't know if it's development spaces or IT spaces, Indians operate on a caste system. So you get a lot of Brahmins, and once they get in, they just look to hire other Brahmins. That's already going on right now. So that is a reality. You will get other ethnic groups looking to make sure that they get their other ethnic group into the space because they're already in the space. That's already going on. So Indians are even pushing out white men. Yeah,
because I work in tech, so I'm seeing it play out because it reminds me when I used to play baseball. I would it was like maybe 10% black kids and the rest would be like Caribbean Hispanics. Yeah, and I'm saying Afro Tech to me had a similar vibe of like would present it as, and I'm not saying it's the conference itself. I'm just using that as one example because it is a bigger black tech conference. Yeah, it's sold as like. It's sold as kind of like a unity thing, which that is true. But I think if you look at the numbers, it kind of pull like a vet Carnell out of my bag metaphorically. It's not. It's probably, like I said, under half African, like under half ADOS. So I think like that's the thing I find kind of interesting. It's like, where is that group at? And then when I look at the white kids, when I used to do some stuff at University of Cincinnati, some of them kind of will peep game and be competitive, but some of them were just like they had an autopilot mindset of like I could just be mediocre here and coast into a job, and I'm like, I don't know if that's really going to happen for you in the future. Your parents maybe, but so I'm saying all to say like I don't, my suspicion is that for my generation and younger, the Black American and European American might have to work harder to kind of get what their parents already got financially and professionally.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I really think that's going to be across the board. But I do think that other ethnic groups, because of how their country already works, they have more of a group mentality. Because again, Nigeria is an artificial state. It's just like I might as well call it cat in the hat. So they really don't have that nationalism, and they don't have that melting pot mentality that we have in America, where we've been programmed to think we're all the same thing. So again, I think they already come over here. We know the Indian caste system. They already have a strict caste system, and people already know I'm going to get this based on where I'm at in the caste system. So that's been established before they ever came over here. So I just think Americans, but especially Black Americans, have to change their perspective. I don't have any issue with other Black ethnic groups, but I know my history and I know my lineage. Yeah. And I'm in favor of those people. And so I know how to manage those relationships, but I don't have any issue with it. But I think a lot of Black people have still kind of bought into it. Like there's still an overhang of Pan-Africanism, things of that nature, where they really don't understand how the real world really works.
Well, it's gotten worse because they're, like I said, at Afrotech, they're still talking about like, Black, they were using the word, they literally said on stage like Black and brown. And I'm like, Black Afrotech, like there's no brown, there's just black. Because we talk about the Indians, but I'll be honest with you, the Hispanics, they have their own system of like, okay, these white people run it, and then it goes down. The lower you go down, the darker it gets, and they see no issue with that system. So it's like when I'm looking at an Indian group coming in, that's like their top, I don't know, let's say 10%. I'm looking at a Hispanic group coming in, that's like a mixture of their upper elites and their working class.
Mhm.
And both those groups in those countries, like they'll complain about the system, but they're cool with. They have no issue with telling someone here that's black to kind of stay in their lane in a more covert or overt way. And I think this country is one of the few countries I've been to where you see people go from lower class to even upper class or upper middle class. My theory is that I think they're going to use some of these groups to kind of how do I put it? I'm going to say box people into like lower classes, but I'm trying to think of a better way to articulate it, but reinforce classism that hasn't really been here before, because most white Americans are not comfortable. They kind of say it behind closed doors, and I'm not sure where Black Americans overall feel about class, but I know that Indians have no issue expressing it. I know that Latinos have no issue reinforcing it and expressing it.
Oh, I agree with you. But I think again, our issue here is we see blackness as flat.
Yeah.
Without realizing that other people come from places where there's already a class system. So like in Nigeria, I was talking about earlier, you have a bunch of billionaires that are attached to government and just got a lot of poverty. So that class system already exists. And so the people that already have the money, they just associate with each other. They fly back and forth to the UK, places like that. They already have their own ecosystem set up. So what I'm saying is that Black Americans have not been programmed to see things from that particular perspective. So we spend our time fighting with other Black Americans around aggregating ourselves around being Black Americans, instead of spending the time building the community and building the networks to compete with other groups. Because I don't have any problem with Black people from Africa, but I don't think they should get what my people fought for. I think they should fight for something. So that's my thing. But you still have a bunch of Black people inside the United States that think that just because they're from Africa, they should get what my people fought for. No, they need to go fight for it. Because again, I'm gonna say this, no disrespect to Africans. If they won't fight Black people in Africa, they won't fight white folks.
Yeah.
And we got what we got by fight white people.
Yeah.
So I know they're not really built to get past a certain level of the game. But if we're not organized, we can't do anything about it. But no disrespect to nobody from nobody else. I know if these people put a certain amount of pressure on them, which they will when they realize they're taking their stuff, they're gonna fold like a deck of cards. Because they wouldn't do it in their own land against other people that look like them.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And they have no idea what they're dealing with these people over here. So it's gonna be easy till it's not easy, but they don't realize how vicious these Anglos can get in America.
Yeah, because I mean, when I look at the European Americans, especially when I lived in the Midwest, like I think you had talked about why you didn't really like living in the South, because it's that like Negro versus Anglo kind of complex.
Yeah.
And that was how it was in the Midwest. And like last time I was out there, I've noticed there was more Hispanics there. Like they were always there, but it was a smaller community. I'm talking about like in Kentucky area, and like around Louisville, it's like noticeably more.
Yeah.
In Cincinnati as well, when I went over there, it's noticeably more. Like not a lot. And I think they're realizing like, okay, these other groups, I don't know if they're what they're bringing them in there to do, but I think they're seeing like, okay, they're realizing it's not just, blue team versus red team anymore. It's like there's other people, they're seeing the globe kind of interact with them. Yeah. They're not articulating, but I think they're feeling like, the globalism impact them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But we need to see with this new administration, how they manage a lot of Hispanics. And I think that may be an eye opener for some of them. But Anglos have shown in this country, once they realize that they're losing a foothold to other ethnic groups, they get very violent. But we haven't seen that over the past X amount of years.
But so what about tech? I mean, they're not. I'm not gonna say they're not in it, but I mean, most of your software is built by like H1B1 Indians or Asians.
But the perception is not there yet.
I see.
So I'm saying once they start to get the perception that we're losing what we have, that's why I was saying that white people spend a lot of time focused on Black folks, and that's not the people that's taking stuff from them.
Yeah.
But once they start getting that perception, they've shown historically that they will get very violent. So I think the attitude to where they're going to lose a foothold in this country and they just going to sit back and take it, no, that's not going to happen, because that's not who we're dealing with. Because we've seen historically, as Black people started to make certain type of gains in this country,
Mhm.
and Anglos became aware of it, they got extremely violent, like extremely
Mhm.
violent. And so I just think we haven't seen that, but again, the perception is different. We're doing a lot of model minority stuff. A lot of people is, they doing stuff and hiding their hands. They backdooring a lot of situations. But
Mhm.
eventually, if America starts getting under a lot of economic stress, you will start getting a narrative around America for Americans, kind of very similar to what's her name told Vivek, that I wouldn't vote for you because you're Indian.
I see.
See what I'm saying? So she showed it right then and there that there's a limit that you're gonna get with me, and then you're never gonna get past that.
Yeah, like you can be the manager, but you can never run the business.
Exactly. And she told him
Yeah.
straight, it's just because of your ethnicity. I don't see you ever being I would say qualified for that position. And
Because they're not really managing the system.
Exactly. He's spending all his time he could spend kissing white people's butt.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But she let him know there's a limit that you can go with me in this particular area. I don't really believe. And you do have a segment of MAGA that really believes that America should only be officiated or governed by Anglo-Americans.
Mhm.
And everybody else,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they really believe that. So, like I said, I just think other people will get their space, but these people are not gonna sit by and let these people push them out without getting really violent. And that's their history. That's their history.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that with the younger generation. Z kids have a different tone because I run into them quite a bit when the gym I go to. They're a bit more conservative compared to like the millennial white kids I run into. They're a bit more. They're like the opposite end of it. They're very just like super pro democratic. Like they're never. I don't know. I don't see them really voting for Republicans. If they do, it must be like really closeted.
Okay.
So you can already see. I'm not sure if you run into like the younger generation Z kids, but their tone when I've run into them is they'll make fun of a lot of white millennials, like with just like their viewpoints and like there was something that one of them said to me, like it was something like feminism is for fat white women. It was like a white girl that said this.
Yeah.
But she was like had to be like 20, 21.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm noticing with them, I'm guessing that generation, just hypothesizing that generation, that specific segment of that generation is going to be the group that kind of swings the pendulum back more conservative. Because I think they're seeing, or they're afraid of losing their position for themselves, losing white people's position for themselves in this country going forward for, like their earning potential, their lifestyle. And I think they also see themselves as a minority in their own generation. They just don't say it out loud as much.
Yeah, and and like I said, I think you'll get more to that because that's how this country has operated. Is that once Anglos fear that they're losing their economic foothold, they rally together.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've done that time and time again. And it doesn't matter how qualified or how merit the person that they're dealing with is, because they don't really believe in merit and things of that nature. But they've shown over time is that if they think that they're going to lose grip of what they think is theirs, which is America, they'll rally around that and they'll essentially create a united front to get rid of that. And it's really their fear of losing their economic ability and their ability to essentially dominate the society.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think that that's all they really have. Because if you look at the global picture, just from my perspective, I think they already know that they're not going to lose their empire, but I do think they know that their empire is contracting and their influence is contracting.
Yeah, definitely it is, and it was going to happen regardless of what they've done. But I think their reaction to it is going to be very frantic because it's so much of their national pride is attached to it.
Well, for me, because I'm like in that middle ground of like where millennial meets Gen Z, I think they rely too much on, how do I put it? I think the U.S. has been on autopilot since 1990 when the Soviet Union fell, and I think they raised a lot of millennials to be like a perfection of like American ideals in a world with no competition. And I think now they're realizing like, oh crap, the Chinese they're the pit bull off the leash. They like broke the leash, and now they're just running the yard, just tearing stuff up. And now the owner at this point, or the future owner, is going to be like a millennial that doesn't, not all of them, but they might not, the white one might not have a strong backbone, and they're kind of caught up in, their own version of, I don't want to say it's a dating industrial complex, but like a different outlook of the world. They're not really, as, in my opinion, as grounded into like the reality of things that you would say.
Yeah, but so and I understand where you're coming from, but something I was always told growing up is that over time, every generation will become less racist.
Yeah.
But what we really saw is that if you build a robust enough system
Mm-hmm.
and there's culture inside that system, you can bring people into that system and they adapt to it.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is that an adjustment of certain things, even though we're different generations outside of like the civil rights movement, yada, yada, yada. So I just really haven't seen the change in domestic policy, foreign policy with America, even though we're dealing with a younger generation of people.
What do you
Right?
mean by that?
What I mean is that we were told when I was your age, really, that racism would go away because the people that was racist would die out.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen because it's a system.
Yeah.
And the system is designed to culture you around certain ideas and beliefs. So you got a guy, I don't know how old he is, I think he's in his 30s, getting ready to become Secretary of Defense. And his attitude is that the military is too diverse. So they're trying to roll, they have an attitude where they're trying to roll stuff back to where they feel secure, even though he's a younger guy. He is a millennial, but he has an influence. And so then he also has younger people that look at him that are going to buy into his ideology. So what I've always felt is that this thing called America works because of really good systems. It doesn't necessarily work because of like mindset or people's personality. It's just a system that's designed to get people to change to what they're trying to do. So you will get some different perspectives because you're dealing with a younger generation. But I think the overall, what they're doing is an actual system that's designed to do what it's doing. And until that system goes down, nothing's really going to change.
I see what you're saying.
It's a system.
I mean, I hear what you're not off. My own disagreement is that the millennials, so there's a segment of them, there's the more Democrat, the pro Kamala crowd I would run into. To me, their tone was they actually have good intention. I think they participate in white supremacy, but from their perspective, they're like, I'm trying to be more tolerant, more engaged with people of color. Like they kind of have that type of tone. Like you hear their vocabulary. But I think I mean that's pretty much how I look at them. I think with like a lot of the people that are under Trump's banner, I think they're the white, at least the white millennials of them. I think to me, they come off like they're looking at the board like, okay, our empire is contracting. We need to go back to the original programming of white is on top and, what worked for them back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I think when I hear the pro Kamala kids or the Democratic, the more liberal ones, quote unquote liberal ones, their angle to me just comes off as like, I don't know. To me, I don't think they really understand that America's an empire all the way. And I think they seem caught up in like a lot of academic theories and not like a lot of like grounded, realistic, I don't know, things. I don't want to say theories, but just like systems, like how the system actually works. They're kind of caught up in like the dressing or the marketing of how the system works. We're like, no, the system doesn't really, like you see it kind of with some of the people that are like that are in the Palestinian movement. They're like their intentions are good, but they don't understand, like, you needed to suppress them these countries and treat them like a tributary state. And, they don't understand like why Israel's there. Well, they maybe get it. They get it now, but I'm saying you kind of need to break some eggs and make an omelet. And they're, I think, struggling with the fact that like they're the benefactor of that omelet. Whereas
I think a lot of Americans, but the question is that the politics kind of works to get people to kind of identify with something. Yeah. But that may not necessarily be what's going on behind the scenes. 100%. So if these political parties can get people to vote for something, but we know because you've been around long enough, regardless of who's in office, defense always gets funded.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that they're going to push this system because of the overall ideology that they believe in. The CIA is still going to be the CIA. And that's going to take place even though the average person in America may feel like they're voting for something different. So even if Kamala was going to get elected, defense was still going to get financed.
Yep.
And they still was going to use Terminator drones to kill people in Yemen. They still going to push foreign policy that's going to kill millions of people. Like that's not going to change because the same Terminator drone program they had during Obama that killed all those people, Trump got in, he didn't change it.
Continuation of power.
Exactly. The same economic sanctions against Venezuela that Obama had when Trump came in, he continued them. In fact, he made them, brought them to a higher level. That stuff don't change. Our policy against Cuba has been consistent over all these years before I was even born.
But what I'm saying is that I think some of the more progressive white millennials have an angle of like, I don't know, to me their flavor of dressing is more, it's niceties, it's a little bit passive aggressive. It's not as transparent about, okay, this is how, this is what it takes to run an empire. I mean, I'm hearing white people now talk about their birth rate declining, like openly. What I'm saying is, when I heard them talk about it openly, to me, I was like, oh, they're understanding that we needed to have white families to run our system. I think they're realizing, like the Trumps, the Elon Musk, I think they either realized it before and didn't say it out loud, or they've just blatantly, whatever it is, I hear them blatantly saying, hey, white people, you need to contribute to the system in order to keep running it the way you've had it. When I hear the liberal ones, they're kind of in this like space of, I don't know, sometimes they come off a little bit of an Arrested Development, and they're kind of, it just comes off very McGraw-Hill to me. Like, that's just not how that system really works. I get that's how they're selling it to you, but I don't know. I hope I'm coming off really clear. I might be a little, long-winded or a bit around the way explaining. I'm just saying, I have personally noticed a conservative shift with the younger Generation Z kids. Not all of them, but they're not trying to pretend to be Democrats. I see these cats like talking about, how they voted for Trump out loud. I hear them making conservative jokes out loud.
I understand what you're saying.
The millennials really weren't. There was some of them like that, but they were ostracized for it. So I'm saying there's a shift in that generation of like where they're that younger, to late 90s, definitely 2000 kids. I think they're looking at these millennials and just kind of, like I said, the whole system, and realizing like, okay, this is a now or never, because they don't know, my personal opinion, if they lose this, that their empire really contracts badly, some of these kids are gonna have to immigrate out the country to, go work. I'm not saying to go work like sweep the street, but they might have to go live in, maybe Asia to go, make that magical six figures that they want.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And one thing we do notice from like voting data is people normally get more conservative as they get older. So if they're already starting off conservative, they'll probably be a lot more conservative in their 30s and their 40s, because people normally become more liberal. They're more open-minded. They have a lot more ideals that they're willing to explore. They kind of, once life kicks them in the butt a little bit, they become a little bit more conservative because they kind of understand how the world works, but they also kind of fall into the ideology of their overall group. So I agree with you, but I just, like I said, is that we'll sit back and watch and observe, but I don't think what we've seen in other countries to where, so here's why I say this. We saw the brother, the Indian dude, get control of the UK. He was a prime minister.
Rishi.
Yeah, Rishi. But his UK didn't really fundamentally change.
Yeah.
The people that were in power were still in power. The people behind the scenes that are running the show, they just let him be the face of it. And the program that they're running is still the program they're going to run, but they just let him be the face of it for whatever reason, because we know that, because we understand colonialism and things of that nature. They've always been able to use Indians to exert power the way they wanted to, but they've always still held the power. So what I'm saying is that even though we can have certain ethnic groups move into certain spaces, you talk about, a lot of the Patels, they're really, really big in the hotel space out here in Atlanta.
Yep.
But at the same time, they don't run Atlanta.
No, they don't. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They don't run, and they also don't run Georgia. So even though they do have a big economic, they have a big economic footprint here. They are an economic group here, but the real power here was still held by Anglo-Saxons.
Yeah, and they've said it. They know. They've said it in conversations. When I've talked to some of their relatives, the younger ones, they're like, they feel that the lack of political organization they have, but I think they realize it's the lack of numbers they have in this country. They've been trying to figure that out quiet as it's got. Like, how
they got money though.
Yeah, but not the quantity.
Yeah, but I mean, they can't finance candidates to get the political power, because they do have the bread. Because like a lot of, you'd be surprised how many hotels out here in Atlanta Metro are owned by Patels. Like, it's crazy. So they have it, but they just haven't been able to marshal the power. It may not be something they're interested in, because a lot of ethnic groups kind of like to play it low key and just make money.
That's kind of what they are. I mean, if I showed you the kid I know, he works a regular job.
I feel you. So that's the thing. So so that's the thing. But again, we'll see how it plays out. But I'm looking at it from more of a historical standpoint, and I've kind of seen how Anglos react to when they think they're losing their grip on things. And it's very reactionary, and it's often very violent. We should go study the riots in 1919 to really get a really good understanding. If they even think that they're losing their grip, they just become very reactionary, very violent. So we could see some of that. We also could see a lot of messaging against some of these groups because of that, which could be the start of it, which could lead into something else later on. Because America's a very volatile place.
Yeah, it's already starting. I mean, I have a friend that's Chinese. He's mentioned that he's big for years, like a couple of years now. Like he's mentioned, like it's been more anti kind of Asian sentiments, not from black people, but he's the same from like white people, implying conversations and stuff. So yeah, I'm expecting for them to be some propaganda they kind of run out there with it to kind of, you know, knock some other groups.
Yeah, definitely. They don't want to lose, and they have to allow their group to keep the perception of power, even though that same power is being held by a very small group of people.
Exactly.
But they have to make sure that the average Anglo in America still feels like he has an advantage over other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if people really know why they came over here, this is, you know, nirvana for them. You know,
exactly. So they have to keep selling that to them. So they're going to do little things to make sure they can continue to sell it. But we all know the power is being held in a really, really small group of people who don't have any desire to share power with anybody else.
Well, this is my last question before I hop off here.
Go ahead.
So relating it back into the industrial relationship complex, where do you think that, you know, those people will be at, you know, by the end of this administration, at the end of those 4 years? Do you think they'll still be on top, not say on top, but marketable? Do you think they'll still be selling their courses and their, you know, ideas? Or do you think it's going to be a shift that occurs in that space where people just realize it's not really working for them?
No, I think they'll always have a space. So I was talking about earlier, one thing I learned from like really, really good marketers is that relationship, how to make money online, and diet fitness are like the biggest categories on the internet. They're like monster categories. Some of the best marketers in the world are in diet and fitness. Like those dudes are like killers. I think because it becomes like a feedback mechanism. If we have enough people that have failed relationships and we never fix those failed relationships, they produce more people failed relationships, which means what? The market just continue to expand. So what I think, yeah, see what I'm saying? So I think their lack of desire, because it doesn't really fit their business model, to actually fix the problem creates more people with the problem. So if they could just kind of maybe change their messaging, understand what their angle is going to be, because we know that we're going to bring in a new cohort of younger people. What I was talking about earlier on in the video, you know, a lot of younger people are not having sex, but they're also consuming a lot of pornography. So that's going to cause relationship issues for them.
I can tell you it's probably worse than you think. But
I know, because I could believe you. So
that's
what I'm saying.
The age bracket, because I go out and talk to them. Because I'm in like some of the relationship side of YouTube.
Okay.
That like Erica used to kind of, not Obsidian, but like some people, not like anyone really radical, but like some people, like I've talked to some of them offline and all that jazz. And yeah, I mean, the ones that are more balanced, they make their money, but they're more like objective about what's going on.
Yeah.
They realized it before I did, because I thought the kids in my age bracket weren't going to be that bad, but I realized in conversation, like I'm like, yeah, I think they just even the way they date, it's just I'm talking women and men, it's really awkward, and I realized a lot of them are they don't, I don't think they realize they're addicted to porn, but I'm like, nah, you sit at home a lot, and I kind of know what kind of goes on here if you could read between the lines. And yeah, they're just not outside enough. Like they'll go out and they're kind of like more segmented, and they're like, it's like a weird gender divide, but it's Donald. Yeah, I think it's just a lack of social skills.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. It's a byproduct of this particular time period where they have the opportunity. So again, those people are going to fail at relationships. Yeah. So it's going to feed those people back into that same industry. So the industry is not going to go anywhere, because we're in a kind of weird area where we de-emphasize relationships, de-emphasize community, and then just flooded the market with easy access to pornography.
I think, just my personal opinion, I think they'll get it when they're in their mid to late 30s. Because I think it'll take their parents getting older, possibly passing away, them kind of like taking on adulthood, them realizing it's kind of like, you know, it's up to me to change my life. It's up to me to go outside and meet somebody. Like I think the dating apps and Instagram and a few other things that just made it like, it's made a lot of people into lazy daters, at least in the US. Because when I go to this age bracket abroad, it's not the same flavor. It's like a little bit different problems. But when I see them in North America, it's like specifically the US. Canada has it, but it's not as bad. It's like very closed off, and I don't think they realize they don't get a lot of results because they're so closed off socially. I don't think they're, just my personal opinion, I don't think they're going to get it to like their, like I said, mid to late 30s, and they'll kind of, it'll be like their own kind of journey of like realizing, not that they screw themselves over, but the people online, and they had more fear rather than trying to go outside and, you know, experiment with stuff. So
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. But I just think one of the challenges is that if they've already been socialized that all their answers are on the internet, they're gonna go right back to the internet to find the answer to the problem.
that's fair. I didn't
See what I'm
think
saying?
about it like
Because they've already been socialized, all the answers on the internet. See, when I was growing up, the answer wasn't on the internet. So you had to, you know, so we didn't even expect it. So I think the challenge is that they've already been socialized. I think the answer to my problem is on some type of, and it's going to be different online platforms when they get in their 30s, but then they're going to go and find this particular solution based on this person that's positioned themselves as being the guru. And if they can speak, you know, we know in sales, if you can speak to the problem, the person will gain trust in you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You see what I'm saying? So they'll just find people that are really good. You know, marketing is never going to go anywhere. It's going to get easier to do. It's people get better at it. How can I speak to the problem? Because a 20-something-year-old guy or early 30-something-year-old guy that doesn't have a lot of experience in relationships is he has a certain way in which he looks at the world because of his lack of exposure.
100%.
Yeah, and so he just won't even know that he's being gamed because he don't have enough exposure.
Makes sense. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, because you know, you have to, this guy, this was a long time ago, early 2000s, the whole pickup thing.
Yeah,
and guys was paying guys money to teach you how to go talk to women, and all you had to do was go talk to them. But that was a big thing at one time. And then it moved into like the red pill space. But I'm always remember the whole pickup space.
Yeah, I mean, because where it is now in the men's side, it's like there's some intellectual circles of it, but I think there's the mainstream is like Fresh and Fit, I guess Rolo Tomasi.
Yeah.
And then on the women's side, what's her name? Shira.
Yeah, she's a witch though.
Yeah, I mean, she used her magic to kind of get some clout. So
I guess so. I don't know. I guess so.
The thing is, I've said to some of those kids, I'm like, look, you know, the better coaches, there are people there that will kind of help you. But the thing is, like, you have to kind of look for them. And I don't know. It just depends what you really want. And my thing is, like, a lot of this comes down to, like, going outside and just talking to people. But I think, yeah, it's just, I suspect with a lot of the millennials and definitely with the Generation Z kids, if they're really chronically online, I think what's going to change them won't be the age. I think it'll just be the economic situation and the country changing and then their finances changing. But I think by the time they realize they might have to work with someone to get some money or to get stability, to get, you know, family.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them will probably be, like I said, their early 30s, maybe mid 30s or late 30s. Because I think it'll just take people getting older, situation changing, money changing, how the job market looks, you know, being permanently set, like where it's, you know, you need to do more to get that $80K job.
Yeah.
People realize, okay, you know, maybe I shouldn't go just pick somebody off of like, you know, they got a, you know, a nice figure or they got, you know, they got good, you know, mouthpiece. It's going to be like, can this person actually be a substantial person? And that's kind of what I was saying about Afro. It's like, it was some aspects of that. I wouldn't say it was entirely that, but it was some aspects of that, you know, some shallowness. Anecdotally, I saw. I'm not saying that was the whole time because I wasn't in all the spaces, but there was some stuff I saw where I was like, seems a little bit of a surface level pick versus this person seems a bit more of, you know, longevity there. But yeah, I mean, that's just, you know, younger subscribers. So that's what I'm seeing in my age bracket. It's like a lot of people still, you know, post college dating like they're still in college. And I'm like, can't just, you know, willy nilly just hang out with everybody.
I feel you. What city was Afro Take in?
It was in Houston.
Yeah, so you go back to Houston, man. Go to A-Leaf, man. You see them Nigerians, man. You know, they ain't doing no computer programming.
Oh no! I've run into. I used to live in New York, and then around DC, so I'm familiar with the Nigerian kind of like underbelly stuff. So I never really put them. Not personally my honest opinion, I was never really that impressed with them. I think the marketing here for them is very strong, but they don't like talking to me because I usually bring up the topic of like, well, how are your cousins in London doing? And they just kind of go quiet because they know, like I know. I'm like, yeah, America filters you out or filters them out. England does not filter them out. So in London, you know, they work the trash jobs.
Exactly.
And, you know, because I was never that guy, but I'm just saying because they're here and because how white people look at them and position them, I just think they could box some people out and some people might not realize it. So that was it. It was never
they already doing that though. They already do. Because when I was in college, and this was a long time ago, like 08, 09, they already had Nigerian like clubs. And their job was to aggregate, try to figure out how to get jobs, network, share information, yada, yada, yada. But then we let them into how I think, a Black Student Union. So we let them into Black Student Union, and we shared information with them. But then when they would roll back into their own clubs, if you would go to their clubs, they would want to share no info with you.
Yep.
So that's how they. So I seen at that time, like, that's kind of really how they play ball. But I was raised around a lot of West Indians, and I was cool with some of them, but other ones, they just was weird. So I kind of knew it could get like that because they come over here for resources, and they know that there's not really enough resources for everybody. And so they're kind of doing what they were doing in their own land, is they're trying to make sure they aggregate those resources amongst their group. And that's just how it is. I just wish Black Americans could realize that's the game that they're playing. And it's not an animosity. It's not like I'm mad at them. I know what time it is. Okay, bro, cut out. All right, y'all. So look like Xavier cut out. So we're going to get up on out of here because we had 2:16. Let me get these last super chats before we bounce out. Cedric Ware, man, I appreciate $10 super sticker. AW Beats, man, I appreciate the $5. K Business Channel, man. K got a really good channel on business, what type of business you need to open, things of that nature. I think we got everybody else. All right, y'all. So we had 2 hours. We finna get up on out of here. Big up to Xavier for coming through. Appreciate it. Y'all be easy, man. Talk to y'all later.